Welcome to the California Association of Health Facilities Tabletop Exercise video. This video is made possible through state and federal emergency preparedness grant funds. This video has been produced to assist skilled nursing facilities meet new emergency preparedness requirements. Among other things, this new rule requires that skilled nursing facilities participate in 2 training exercises each year, of which one could be a tabletop exercise. The first 2 training exercises should be completed by November 17, 2017. For the specific requirements of this new emergency rule, click the link. A tabletop exercise is an activity where management and staff get together and discuss a response to a simulated emergency scenario. This takes place in an informal, non-threatening, no-fault environment to encourage participation by everyone. Discussion will center around pre-identified areas of your emergency plans, procedures, and/or response protocols. The main goal of a tabletop exercise is to identify strengths, discover areas for improvement, and achieve better understanding of response complexities during a real event. We will discuss the 4 major areas of completing a tabletop exercise: planning and designing, conducting, the debrief, also known as a hot wash, and completing the after-action report. Planning and designing. It is highly recommended that, if possible, you establish an exercise team. Different points of view will allow the exercise to benefit all staff. Select a cross-section of your facility and make sure to keep the size of your planning team manageable. There are 7 steps in planning and designing a tabletop exercise.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to thank you guys for helping out by being on the exercise planning team. First thing is to look to see what emergency functions we may need to test.
Also, which staff members are in need of training.
And if we have any new updates to our emergency plans or procedures, we should probably test those as well.
I agree. We also need to check our hazard vulnerability assessment to see if there's any specific incidents we need to test. We will use the hazard vulnerability assessment that we downloaded and completed from the CAHF Disaster Preparedness webpage. Let's move on to see how big or complex we want to make the tabletop.
This would be dependent on what we prioritize as our needs.
Yes, and based on which needs we choose to address, we can determine if we need to include outside agencies in the tabletop exercise.
Do we want to test just our internal procedures? Or do we want to test the relationships we have with partners in relation to the incident? This will determine and shape all other planning we do as we go forward. Next up is establishing a goal or a purpose statement. This is created to capture the intent of the entire exercise. It is done before the scenario so that we can create a scenario around testing the goals.
So an example of this might be, this exercise is designed to provide feedback on critical emergency evacuation operations during a power outage. Are you guys familiar with the SMART acronym? It's a concept used to design objectives.
SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. As you write your objectives, you can check to see if they are SMART.
Exactly. And there is plenty of information online. Just Google SMART Emergency Objectives, and you'll find plenty of information. Okay, now comes the fun step. We get to create the scenario. The scenario should show a realistic emergency situation. So what do we need for that?
Well, for one thing, it should provide details of the current situation, like time of day.
Yeah.
It should include what event is happening or about to happen and how it would affect the facility.
And also how it would affect our local or regional area.
As we create the scenario, we want to leave some time so we can add injects into the storyline. Injects will change the way the scenario looks to stimulate discussion from the participants so that they have to address the new situation.
Where will we hold our tabletop exercise?
I'm glad you asked that question. Our next step in the process is figuring out the logistics for the exercise.
Logistics meaning time, date, and location.
As well as, agenda, break time, room setup. Additionally, it always seems to be better if you provide refreshments for the participants.
I like that idea. We are nearly finished with our planning. Now we need to find out the right participants to invite to our exercise.
If we need to invite people from outside our facility, we need to make sure to give them enough time to calendar the activity.
It's important we have an evaluator for this exercise. They will be responsible for assessing how the exercise went and determining if we met our goals and objectives.
Well, we've reached the last, but the most time-consuming part. We need to prepare the materials for the exercise, and that includes the situation manual.
And the situation manual includes exercise schedule, rules of play, assumptions, scenario, and goals and objectives.
Yes, but the situation manual doesn't include everything. We will still need to develop an evaluation tool that the evaluator can use and a tool for response and feedback from the participants. These will be critically important when we have to do the after-action report at the end.
We will also need to finalize and print out the scenario injects. If I remember correctly, those aren't included in the situation manual. Those are delivered separately during the actual exercise.
With the planning complete, the next element in the process is conducting your exercise. On the day of the exercise, it is important to have a facilitator who controls and directs the activity so that all of the goals and objectives can be addressed. Next, the exercise will begin.
Good morning, and thank you for being here for our tabletop exercise. My name is Tom, and I will be your facilitator for today's exercise. How many of you have been part of a tabletop exercise? Good. Let me tell you a little bit about a tabletop exercise. In short, it's a hypothetical situation that tests our emergency plans, procedures, and response capabilities. When done correctly, it is an extremely beneficial activity that identifies both the strengths and weaknesses of our systems. Information from this exercise will be used to modify and improve our emergency systems. In front of you is a situation manual for today's exercise. But first and foremost, we are conducting the exercise in an informal, no-fault, non-threatening environment. It is created to encourage participation by all attendees. The scenario for today's exercise is as follows. You can follow me on page 5 of your situation manual. It's 10:30 on Thursday, May 21st. The weather is warm, about 75 degrees. Your building is at 95% capacity.
Scheduled amount of time, the facilitator will stop the group discussion and have the participants report out what their responses are to the question.
I'm glad to see all the hard work you put into this exercise to this point. So what have you come up with so far?
Our first task was calming the residents. They can get cranky when their routine is disturbed and they can become very argumentative.
The first thing we did, we called 911 to report the noise. We wanted to find out what exactly was going on.
You all did very well on that first segment. But as you know, emergencies are never predictable. So we have new information on the situation. And that new information is going to cause action on your part. Police and fire and other emergency responders have arrived at the scene.
To stimulate new discussion and to address other goals and objectives, the facilitator can now present the first inject, which will update the scenario with additional information and situation awareness. The participants go back into discussion to come up with new actions in response to the inject and answer additional questions presented by the facilitator.
With this new set of circumstances, what would you need to do? And how would you accomplish it? What difficulties might this present? And who are you in contact with for assistance?
After the facilitator has presented all the injects, given enough time for participant discussion, and had everyone report out, the facilitator would end this phase of the exercise.
Thank you for your participation in this phase of the exercise, but we have one last thing to do. We would like your input on today's activity.
Before the participants leave the exercise, it is critical to get feedback from them on the information discussed during the activity and the tabletop process. This can be done through direct verbal feedback, a written evaluation, or both. Questions to the participants can be specific or open-ended. You will have to determine what type of questions to ask and what type of information you wish to collect. Your knowledge of the participants will have a big role in what type of evaluation tools you wish to use.
Today we will be putting together our after-action report. The after-action report is a consolidation of the information we learned during the exercise. We will also report out on how we did at achieving the goals and objectives for the exercise.
It'll also let us know areas of improvement that we can work on, and that will lead us right into our improvement plan.
When done correctly, a tabletop exercise is an effective way for facilities to evaluate the preparedness of your emergency programs, identify gaps and deficiencies, clarify roles and responsibilities, increase awareness of potential hazards, assess existing and needed resources, and improve coordination between teams and organizations. For further information on the tabletop exercise, you can go to the following websites: